All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming out to the next session of the Founder University series. Today, we're going to be talking about applications, windows, how to apply, finding funding agencies. There's a lot of different kinds of funding out there, and a lot of times entrepreneurs need to get a little bit scrappy with what they're considering. And one of those is these kinds of federal or related funding opportunities. Some of you may have heard of the SBIR, STTR. Cara is an expert on those processes and procedures on getting that kind of funding, and she's going to definitely be diving into those a little bit. They are a very complex topic, and founders can get overwhelmed quite a bit, but they're definitely something to consider, particularly for certain types of ventures out there. But enough about that. I'll let Cara get into that. Cara O'Hare is a project management expert, is StartUpNV's director of programs. With over 8 years of working with startups, Cara mentors entrepreneurs, helps with business model design and customer segments, and guides companies on their funding journeys. Her expertise spans early stage development, project management, and business models, with a background in expanding incubator programs at universities. And without much further ado, Cara, please take it away.
Perfect, Logan. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being here. As Logan mentioned, this is part of our Founder University series and kicking off our federal funding boot camp. So we're going to be diving into some essentials today, and feel free to drop in any questions you have. It can be a convoluted process, and I hope to break that down and make it really easy to understand. So my background, I have spent many years writing applications to the National Science Foundation, Minority Business Development Agency, EDA, SBA, others. I have successfully been awarded $3 million in grants and contracts since 2016. I have these awards, but there are plenty of other awards that not awards, but applications that you don't see, that you don't get funded. And I just want to tell you to be patient. It takes time. It takes persistence. Keep applying. I know it can be difficult when you put all of that energy into it and you get a rejection, but the way forward to get funding is to just really be persistent. Now we're going to dive into this. Just a heads up, my presentation is very QR code heavy. So feel free to pull out your phones and get ready for that. So an overview, discovery. So our grants, right for me, research, what is out there, prep, what do I need before I start, writing, what does an application look like, and reporting. So what does the funder want to know? And that is important not only for, well, obviously after the award, but when you're thinking about even writing this grant, are you prepared to collect the metrics that this agency is interested in hearing from you? So these are the 5 key areas that we're going to focus on today as you start to plan this federal funding journey. Now, grants are typically awarded to nonprofits, and we're going to get into the details of who's eligible. And typically it's from a foundation, a corporation, or a government agency. And they are very, very specific to solve a particular problem with very specific parameters. And the funders will only fund a project that falls within a very specific scope. So we'll talk about what that is. And so why do people do this? It's non-dilutive capital, which is AKA free money. Basically, it's not debt. You don't have to pay it back. It doesn't dilute your ownership in the company. And a lot of people go for it for those reasons. And if you have the persistence and the energy to see it through, it really has a lot of benefits for you and your company. That being said, it is not without strings. So we'll get into what those strings are. So a couple of QR codes, and I'll take some time for you guys to scan these. But first of all, who is eligible? Now, typically, when you hear about grants, it's nonprofits. And most of the grants out there are directed towards nonprofits. But there are plenty of opportunities available for others. And so if you go to websites like grants.gov, which if you scan that QR code on the top right, it'll take you to a page with this screenshot. It shows this really great database of open opportunities. And you can actually toggle at the bottom there eligibility. So there are for-profit opportunities out there. A second thing that a lot of people don't know about is the grant opportunities for nonprofits that are out there. You can partner with a nonprofit to be what is known as a pass-through entity. So that nonprofit who is eligible may apply for these opportunities, and then they may subcontract the work to a for-profit. And it is very grant specific, but that is how some for-profits are able to participate in that program. Now, of course, we've also got the SBIR program, which I like to think of as separate, but SBIRs are small business innovation research grants. And a few weeks ago, we did a really great 2-day event on SBIRs and everything you need to know. So I'm not going to rehash that too much, but if you want to click on that QR code on the left, that is our full SBIR 101 playlist that you can find on StartUpNV's YouTube page. And that is specifically just for-profit companies who have less than 500 employees that are US-based companies. So if that's you and that matches your description, you're working on something that's tech-based, explore SBIRs. But I think everybody, regardless of your entity type, you should start on grants.gov as a place to start. Do we have questions before we move to the next one? Eligibility is kind of a big thing. And we're going to talk about more specifics on other NOFOs.
Right now, there are none from the room and none online. Everyone, please put your questions in the chat. If you're in the room, just raise your hand. And I'll come over to you. Otherwise, just put in the chat, put in the chat as well. I'm assuming as we get more into the weeds, there's definitely going to be some questions going to come up on this.
Okay, great. So what's out there? I found these really fantastic resources for you to start with, but foundations and private corporations are these first 2 QR codes here on the left. And the information, there isn't a single source that I would say is really a great location for all of these funding opportunities, but I did find these 2 and they do look really good. They have paid services for getting into the weeds, but there is a free feature where you can get in there. You can take a look and see what's out there. And then the 2 on the right. So this government all is your grants.gov search grants. That's that QR code from the previous slide. And then the one all the way to the right is for your SBIR specific grants. Now these are not at all like all exhaustive list of grants. There are plenty of other opportunities out there, but definitely the place to start. The key thing that you're looking for when you're doing this research, especially if you're looking at foundations and private corporations and you're not trying to pay money, just first of all, look at what companies are offering grants. There's a lot of banks who do this, like Bank of America and Wells Fargo, but you've also got big nonprofit entities who are also doing their own private grants and foundations. So you want to, across all of these websites, you want to be looking at who is the funder, when are they releasing topics, what types of things are they interested in funding, and then just really at this stage, you want to be building out the landscape and understand who is a key player, because it's not really often that you'll see one big grant from Wells Fargo and then you'll never see them again. Usually if you see something like that, it means that Wells Fargo is a player on the stage and you can expect to see more opportunities from them. So maybe there's an opportunity that one of these entities puts out and it's not quite a fit. That's okay, right? Like we just put it to the side and we think about it for the next year, or maybe we contact that program manager who is running that grant and we ask them about future opportunities. The key thing here is just understanding the landscape of what's out there and what's possible. So build out your trend map here to see what's going on. So finding the right fit, and I've got a couple of examples here, but it's really important because there's so much information out there. It's really important that you align your company's mission and your company's goals with the funder's goals. It's the same thing as if you're selling a product to someone and you want to make sure that your customers care about what you're selling. In this case, the government, you need to make sure that they care, but they also align, right? So the for-profit grants, so SBIRs, their ultimate goal is to stimulate technological innovation. So maybe my company goal is I want to build my product. So I need money to support my R&D to get my product to the market. And so those align, and therefore I should explore the SBIR program. If I'm doing something like the EDA, their goal is to make it easier for businesses to start and to grow. A company goal, maybe if you're doing economic development, maybe my goal is to grow my business or to support the growth of others. And in this case, my goals and my company, the funder's goals and the company goals are in alignment. This is a private grant I pulled from AARP, so American Association of Retired Persons. Their goal is, for this particular grant, is help communities become more livable for people of all ages. And so this is really interesting because maybe I've got a tiny home project I'm working on, or I've got something that's going to make cities more walkable. I've got a really cool smart transportation thing that makes it interesting. And so you can see that their goals might align with my company goals. So as you're just looking at this big picture and you're looking at all these different websites, you find a couple of agencies that you think align with your mission and goals. Think EDA, think SBA. If you are a nonprofit, it's easier to align goals, which is why nonprofits do it. But for profits, you can explore your SBIR options too. So finding the right fit. I like to pick 3 funding opportunities to start with to just understand if they fit for me, right? So if you go back and you make that alignment, and maybe the EDA is the entity that I'm aligned with, I might pick 3 different funding opportunities that they have announced. And I'm going to look and I'm going to see, when was it announced? How long was that grant open, right? So they announced it on this date. How long do you have to actually write it and submit it before you have that close date? And then when were the opportunities announced for the last cycle? So you really want to understand what the opportunity is for that particular agency, what they're looking for, when it's open, when it's closed, how long you have to work with it. So something that a lot of people don't think to do is look at the past. So we look at the past to know where we're going in the future, right? And if you take a look at this screenshot on the right for grants.gov, there's this toggle for not just forecasted and posted, but also closed and archived. A lot of people are like, well, I don't need to know anything about the past. I just want money right now. But it's really important to click on closed and archived, especially in the research phase, and look and see what has been funded, how long it was open, and really understand what has been out there so that you can begin to project and plan for the future. There are certain entities that they will not put information up on their website, and you cannot find it until the application is open tomorrow and you've got 30 days to do it, go. And it can be really stressful and overwhelming, and you don't want to miss the opportunity. But if you take a look at closed and archived and previous submissions, you might see that, like the USDA, for example, is they do this sometimes. You might see that USDA opens in February every year, but that's the only time they ever open. So now you can start to think, well, I know USDA is the right fit for me, so I'm going to start like checking in on January and February. I might check in with the program manager and see what's going on. So you really have a better understanding of what's coming up by looking at the past. Now the SBIR program has this really awesome map. Anybody who is doing an SBIR, this should be your homepage if you are still figuring out where you're going to be applying. But you can see that their trend is the same every month, right? Like, so if you look at the DoD, it's the same trend, December to about mid-February, and then they open again, and then again. And so you can expect this to repeat every year. The last thing you want to do is be rushing and feeling like, oh, I have to get my application in because that's it. I don't know when it's going to open again. If you do this research and you understand when things were previously open, it will get rid of some of that anxiety about when your opportunities are. And you know now how much time you've got to prepare and to plan. Some basics, and it will differ for NOFO on top of this, but these are the basics, right? So you need your required registrations, you need your SAM, you need your UEI, you need your grants.gov registration. I think you also need your DUNS. I'm not sure if that's totally gone yet, but definitely make sure that you're exploring your required registrations. If you're a nonprofit, you're going to want to make sure that you have your IRS form 990 on hand, which is your exempt from income tax form, and company information, org charts, job descriptions, details like that. Because if you're a startup, you might not have an org chart. So just keep this in mind that if you're in the waiting period before grants, you can start to collect this information and start to build it up, so that when it comes time to the application, you can just focus on writing the application and not also building up your company documentation. And this last one is one that a lot of people don't think about until the last minute, but think of people who can provide letters of support and letters of commitment. And build that up ahead of time before you begin the application. Start to think of who would be interested in supporting this, who are your key partners that you need to work with. And then when you make that decision to finally do the application, before you even write, before you do anything, you should contact those people and say, hey, I'm working on this thing. I would love some support. Can you write me a letter of support? That way you've got that period of time that you're writing for them to get back to you, because, you know, you might stay up all night writing this application and you might rush your own timeline to get this thing done, but you can't rush getting things from other people, not entirely, and it's not completely in your control. So this is one of those things that you want to start early. Your registration is also that way. So your registration and anything you need from other people, you do at the very beginning before you start writing. And then these are really just the basics, but each funding opportunity, also called a NOFO, is going to have very, very specific requirements. And we're going to get into that in the next slide. But you want to make sure you review that before you start. Do we have any questions?
We do. So we have a couple of questions. Maggie, this is from you. DUNS is no longer required, but you do need your EUI, unique entity identifier. So
yeah,
DUNS
universal entity identifier number, UEI.
Gotcha. So DUNS is no longer required, but you do. Okay, you do. All right, got it. From Dan, is a startup able to review our Dan, I think there's a misspelling there. Protected TAM-SAM SOM for an application, or projected. Is StartUpNV able to review our projected TAM-SAM SOM for an application? Is that something?
Well, we can certainly work with you on your TAM-SAM and SOM, and Maggie's on this call and she's our TAM-SAM SOM expert. But I should add that especially the commercialization grants like SBIRs, you do not have to get into the details of TAM-SAM and SOM to the degree that investors are interested. Really, for grant applications, they're mostly interested in the TAM and your commercial objectives and where you're trying to go with that. It doesn't need to be as specific because we're talking about this big grand master plan when you're doing a grant application.
All right. Questions from the room? Nothing right now. And then thanks from Dan. All right.
Okay. So NOFO. This is a common question. I love the government. I think they like to throw in a bunch of different acronyms for fun sometimes. NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, BAA, Broad Agency Announcement, Solicitation, RFP, FOA. They're all the same thing. But just keep this in mind. So some people may say solicitation. That's my personal favorite. It's really a detailed description of the project, required elements, required attachments. If you're going to write an application, before you choose to start, before you even send out your letters of support, commitment, before you do anything, read the NOFO. And I mean, really, really read it. Get into the details and know what's eligible. Are you actually eligible? Sometimes that toggle on grants.gov is not completely accurate. So you just want to read through the NOFO and make sure that you actually are eligible, that the project you want to start is something that is fundable by the grant. All of that information is in the NOFO, including, how much money is available, how long they expect this project to go for, and reporting requirements and things that you're supposed to collect during the course of your program. Those are all things that you can find in your NOFO. Now, it's actually can be difficult to find the NOFO if you don't know what you're looking for. This is not exactly a Googleable thing. Sometimes it is, but really it's super specific for the agencies. So if you're going into grants.gov and you actually have to click on the grant opportunity, and what a lot of people do is they get stuck on this first tab down here that says synopsis. And it's a summary, and it's like, great, I align with that. Now, where do I go from here? And if you actually click on related documents or package, which you'll find in almost all applications, that's where you get the meat of it. And you'll get a big zip file. You just have to unzip it and take a look. The full announcement is typically what you're looking for. Sometimes there's this revised full announcement, as you see here with this Bureau of Land Management application, and then supporting documentations. So make sure that you read through all of this stuff, especially supporting documents in this case is probably templates that they want you to fill out that have to do with budget or something. So you just want to click through it, read through it. What I personally like to do is I like to look at the NOFO, I like to look at the required sections, and I like to take those and I put them into my working document, and I create a table of contents out of them so that I make sure that I'm never going to miss one of the required elements. So I start with all of the required sections in my application to start, just to make sure that it's not missing anything. And that way you're going back and forth between your working document and the NOFO, and you're not missing any key information. And the reason I wanted to point this out is because sometimes we see this big apply button, and we start there, and it actually takes you to a login page to grants.gov. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to create an account on something if I'm not sure if I want to do this application or not. So this is a really great way, if you look under related documents and package, to get a sneak peek of the application before you have to sign up for grants.gov or sign up for one of those foundation websites that is eventually going to want more from you. So what does the application look like? Again, follow the NOFO exactly. Take note of acronyms and wording they're using. So you want to think about your grant reviewers as people who have 50 of these on their nightstand, and they've got to get through so many at a time. I find that if you phrase your project in their words, using their acronyms or their verbiage or the things that they are asking of you, they tend to read it better. It flows better because that's what they're expecting. They put it out into the world in a certain way, and if it comes back in a very familiar, recognizable way, it's easier for them to get through it, and they don't have to wade through new acronyms or new ways of describing things. So pay attention to the words that they're using and how they're using them. Making sure that your goals align with the specific grant objectives. So you'll find this at the top of every NOFO. And actually, we're doing a deconstruction of the funding opportunity in a later Founder University session. So I'm not going to get too deep into it. But the key thing is it's, you can't write a grant without reviewing this. And just so you know, make sure that you review the specific grant objectives of the agency before you start working on this. So you have to find, this is where we come back to your mission as a company. What is your bigger mission? What are your objectives? And what are the specific objectives within this grant? And then the proposed project that I'm going to put together, does that align with both? You don't want to just write something to get the money, but you want to make sure that it aligns with your company's objectives and your growth strategy. It also, looking at the NOFO, it helps you understand how much you have to spend. So they'll give you a certain amount of money. They'll say it's $250,000 for 2 years. And so you can start to think about how you're going to break that down into your budget. There are things to think about for your budget that we're not going to be getting into. I know some people like to start with the budget first so that they know what they can create and cover in their application. So you're going to want to review all of that stuff before you start. And then the impact is something that's going to be important for the application itself. So what impact will the grant have on your company and your mission? Ultimately, the whole point of the grant is to have an impact, right? It's going to have an impact on you, on the growth of those around you, on something. You're going to impact and you're going to affect change. And your application should tell us that story. What are you trying to create with this application? Now, after the award, I know that this is far down the road, but it's something to think about ahead of time. You're going to find in the NOFO the reporting requirements, the things that they want to see. If it's an EDA grant, are they trying to create more jobs? Are they trying to create new types of industries? Are they trying to create new stuff? And you think about their impact and their goals that they're trying to affect. And you have to think about how you're going to collect metrics as you go to report on that at the end. So plan for the end at the beginning. What are your metrics for success? What are required? And how are you going to collect that? You do not want to scramble at the end of your award period, trying to figure out numbers and stuff. You want to make sure that that information has been collected upfront as you're working on it. If you're doing an SBIR and you have a commercial impact and you have commercial goals, you should be thinking about how you're going to measure that success. Is it traction? Is it customer surveys? Is it conversations? How are you collecting that? And are you collecting that upfront and as you go? Make sure that you're thinking about this stuff before you start. And then selecting tools and capturing metrics. So if you can do something like Asana or Monday.com or just Excel, that's all great. Just make sure that you collect it as you go and not just scramble at the end. So tips. These are my favorite tips. I personally don't like wading through grants.gov every day. It's a lot of information. There's too much going on. But I think it's a great place for you to start, right? So you start on grants.gov, you start finding agencies that are a fit for you. And then what you do is you get on their mailing list. I'm on the mailing list for every single SBIR agency. And it is so much easier to wade through 15 to 18 emails than to read through 60 pages of grants that are not relevant to me on grants.gov. So find your agencies that are relevant to you and subscribe to their mailing list. Some have monthly roundtable discussions. There's like, for example, the SBA does this really fantastic technology and innovation roundtable that they do, and it's all SBIR stuff that's really great. But the DOE, Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, they also do stuff like this. And if you just dig into who your relevant agencies are, you can see if they've got conversations, they've got info sessions going on, and mailing lists. You definitely want to be on all of that so that you're not just going through all of that information all the time. And then program managers. I think a lot of people are afraid to talk to program managers. And because they're the ones reviewing your application, or you think they are, and you don't want to have a bad impression. There's I think there's a little intimidation with this, but your program managers are there to guide you and to support you and to make sure that if you're going to apply for their grants, that you are a fit. And so for anybody unfamiliar, program managers are the people who are kind of shepherding these programs through their agencies, these grant programs through their agencies. So they're the point person who you would talk to for any questions. They're also the person to reach out to if you haven't seen a posting in a while for a grant and one's supposed to come up. Contact the program manager and they'll tell you what's going on, because most of the time these government agencies will not update the websites until it's like too late for you to get started. So have conversations with these program managers. If you are working with others on the application, communicate early and communicate often, just because you're going to need things from your partners, and you want to make sure that, again, you can't rush things from other people. You want to just make sure that you have enough information to get it into your application in time, and you want to be a good partner, right? So just be sure to keep all that stuff in mind before you get started. And I kind of sped through that, but are there any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Cara. There is a comment from Robert. I learned that I have to submit my invited SBIR phase 1 through research.gov. I paid $500 in help to get my SAM nailed down. Well worth it. I guess to the first point, Robert, do you have any questions there? Let me know. But yeah, I guess do you have to submit through research.gov for the phase 1?
I believe so. I believe every application should be its own application through research.gov, but talk to your program manager because it can differ between each agency.
Gotcha. All right. Okay. From Leona, how can I how do I find a grant writer or a grant writing consultant?
Grant writers are really a common question, and everybody's asking about grant writers. And grant writers are a fantastic resource. The key thing I would say for anybody who is preparing to do this is you should review all of this information before you hire a grant writer, because if you don't know what the applications are going to be or the funding agencies are going to be, you want to know what all this information is, so you have a very specific ask of your grant writer, right? You have this conversation with the grant writer. You say, this is the NOFO I'm going after. This is how much I want to ask for, and this is the specs of it. If you do that, it'll make it much easier for your grant writer to move forward. But a lot of people say, I need a grant, so I'm going to hire a grant writer. But you have to do this research first, or you might end up paying for someone to kind of sit idle and help and not sure where they're going to start. So, but finding grant writers, there are resources out there. I think grant writing is kind of more of a freelance independent contract gig. So if you're very specific on what you are looking for, then you can say, I need a grant writer for an NSF SBIR application, and this is my requirements. Then it makes it much easier to find somebody, because it's more like a job posting at that point. But you want to find somebody who has a track record of success, but is able to read through the NOFO, and they're able to distill your big vision, your thoughts, and your concepts and things you're trying to create into the requirements of that NOFO. So if you're going to be talking to people who would be eligible for that, just make sure that they're able to distill big concepts down into actionable words that align with the elements of that NOFO.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you. There's a couple of comments on the chat about the various playlists and resources that might be available for this. Is USFCR, so I'm just reading through the comments. Well, please put any additional questions in the chat, folks. One I'll field that I heard at our previous SBIR workshop was getting feedback. Is that something that you can expect when you submit a grant and it's denied, or a proposal and it's denied? Is that something that you can expect? And if not, are there ways to go about getting that feedback so you can understand how you can have a successful second follow-on submission?
Ideally, your program managers will get back to you, and they'll tell you exactly why they were rejected. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. I've specifically for SBIRs, I've heard from people who are successful and from agencies themselves, and it's not great, but I've heard that they treat the first application as a rough draft or a first draft instead of a final draft. And so they won't seriously consider it until you do a second submission. I can say that the resubmission rate for SBIRs goes up to like a 45% increased in successful award rate. And that is because they're able to take the feedback from those reviewers from the first rejected application, and they're able to take that and they're able to resubmit. It really depends on your program manager, but you should be able to get that feedback so that you can do a successful application, because they do want you to be successful and they do want to tell you why it was rejected.
Excellent. I think that's the people that I talk to, and again, I'm no expert, I usually refer them to you or someone else who's like, yeah, I didn't know what to do with my feedback, and I'm not sure are they going to provide it, and I'm scared that my second attempt would be just as bad. It's like 45% increase in your second attempt. So that's really compelling.
A lot of people are afraid to do the resubmission, because it can be very brutal the first time, especially after you put so much work in. It feels like, oh, well, they don't want it. They don't want my stuff. So I'm going away. And they're like, no, we're brutal so that you resubmit. Because they do want you to be funded.
Excellent. All righty. Well, I think that we are nearing a great presentation from David. Thank you. I think we're nearing the end of our current questions. I will make a few more closing statements, but if you guys have any final questions, feel free to put those in the chat, and I'll get them before we turn off the recording, or reach out to us. Cara is part of our team. We are happy to take any of the questions you may have following this information session. Oh, from Sean, no question, just thanks. Great job. Thanks, Cara. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So we will be taking a break next week. So please do not join us on this online or in person. We will be resuming the week after, correct, Cara? In 2 weeks? Or are we
Correct,
taking
on the 16th.
On the 16th.
Yeah, we're taking a break on the 9th. Yeah.
All right. And then next we'll hear from Apex on deconstruction of the funding opportunity announcement and grant reporting. Cara, do you have any additional context on that the audience should know, or is that about sum it up?
So that is the Apex Accelerator. If you guys are not familiar with them, they were formerly PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center there in Las Vegas. We are going to hear specifically from Joan Rubin, who's the director of Apex. And if you are not connected, you should absolutely attend on the 16th so that you can meet her and ask all of your burning questions. And she will be diving into the NOFO in more detail and the grant reporting, which is two of the most important parts of the application.
Excellent. And again, that'll be on the 16th, folks. A recording of the session will be made available by Sunday. It'll also be on the Founder University portal, which is online. And we're really excited that everyone came out today and in person, and we look forward to seeing you on the 16th. Cara, again, a couple comments. Incredible as always. Thank you for joining, and also, putting your expertise out there for everyone to hear. Everyone, thank you for joining. If there are no last questions, then we will see you all in 2 weeks. Take care.